Hi, everybody. I'm Indigo. Welcome to the live today, and we have a very beautiful hot topic, which is death as advisor, and that is also in. We're going to be doing an amazing bilingual intent version of the live today. We're going to be having cacao, maybe mocha. We're going to have one of our regular guests, Amber from Libertad de Percepcion, joining today. And so recently, I've been interested for a while in the work of Carlos Castaneda, and I just knew that I was like barely scratching the surface of that. But I wanted to go deeper into it recently. So I've been doing some studies, and one of the concepts that we have from Carlos Castaneda is death as advisor. And I don't have the quote in front of me at the moment, but I am going to invite Amber to come on as soon as she joins, and she's going to share with us. She's going to share with us about her. I'm going to try to add her. Here we go. And talk a little bit today about this concept of death as advisor in our piece.
Hi,
Hi, welcome.
thank you. Nice to see you.
You too.
I love your house.
I thought you might love my house. So I'm in Amber's house right now, and then she's in her family's house. So,
Yeah,
um, yeah, we are here. Um, we've just got, a little bit of time and then we die. So, what should we do with
yes.
them?
You know, well, first of all, thank you everybody for joining. Thank you for joining this. We call it the bilingual intent, and we're going to speak more to that. The bilingual intent, and there is something to that that is very meaningful, and we can go over that in a moment. Um, and I was just thinking of this song that we have been singing for like 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about that. It's about death, and it's about the sense of urgency that death gives us, right? Knowing that death is like stalking us, using this language. Death is stalking us. Then we really don't have time to play the victim. We really don't have time to pretend that we can't do stuff, right? So that sense of urgency, it's what death brings. The awareness of death, that's what it brings in us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have to admit, like, I'm still like a little bit shaky thinking about death. Like, oh my God. I've been one of these people that's been, probably like probably spent a lot of time like spiritual bypassing, trying to ignore my like darkness, trying to ignore my fears and like this inevitability that we're going to die, trying to obsess with things about like light and and how can I feel better, how can I be happier, just a lot of focus on this. So this is like kind of like a plot twist for me, like hiro de la trama for me.
Yeah. And I'm trying to fix the light here. And this is how I see it. It is not that we have to take this stuff to be true. Like, oh, this is the true premise. Now I'm gonna follow this true premise. It's not about that. It's not about what is true, what is not true, but just taking these premises as explorations and and exploring the effect they have on us. So when we take this premise as, the death as an advisor, is like, what is the effect this has on our lives? And that's the magic of it. And yeah, and I just want to say that I can totally relate to what you're saying. I for many years I was one of those persons that would say like, oh, I'm not afraid of death. Ah, I'm not afraid. Like, it's okay, like we're all gonna die anyway. But that was not coming from a true facing of the fact of my own mortality. and making peace with that, but that was coming from bypassing, right? And it wasn't till 2020, you know, that I had a specific experience, and I really came in touch with the deep rooted fear I had around death.
Mm. Do you want to share anything about the experience that you had?
Ah, yeah, it was a plant medicine experience, actually. You know about it, right? I don't want to say specifically what plant, I was working with, but I can say that, it really brought me to the place of like, fuck, I am dying and this is not fun, That's what I thought in the moment. And I got in touch with that panic and horror around death that I felt and I had been feeling for so many years, but I was just like pretending to be fine. I'm not afraid of death. So for me, when someone comes to me and they're like, oh, now I feel afraid of death, but before I didn't, for me, that's a step forward because that is becoming very honest with oneself. That is a step of radical honesty. So that's awesome. That's how I see it.
Yeah, so I'm here. So I hear like, okay, so there's a step toward like then being afraid of death, and then just in light of the song that we've been singing for the past couple weeks, "Born to Die" from Lana Ray. Lana Ray. Um, Through singing it and listening to it over and over again, like I've just heard so many codes in like all of the lines of that song. Like, and even just right before jumping on here, it was like, choose your last words. This is the last time because you and I, we were born to die. And um, like when I hear those words or when I hear some of the words in the song, I almost feel like then there's a place to like transcend like the fear of death. It's like, okay, so there's this avoidance of death, and then we come into, oh, actually I admit that I am afraid of death. And like, so is there, like, have you discovered that there's like another place to get to with this concept of death? Like, I'm really curious about that.
For sure, for sure. And I cannot say I am there yet, but I have had glimpses of that other place, which is beyond fear. It's like in the acceptance of this fact, this reality of our existence, then fear can be transformed into personal power. And that's also one of the ways to work with fear in this Toltec path is we transform fear into power. So um, we transform this fear into awareness, a sense of urgency, a impeccability, a knowing that every word we say count, every act we do could be the last,
Mm.
and that brings impeccability into our lives. We don't have time to mess around.
Woo! Every act will be our last.
Yeah, and that really has an energetic effect on us. That really, we say, compacta la energía. It brings the energy together like this, like very compact, and that creates power to intend, creates power to make decisions, to really think what's our purpose. And yeah, that's kind of the next place I see. But like for me, at this stage of my journey, like that is a mystery, and it's a mystery I cannot solve. And it is just there, as something, reminding me that I must live with all that I have and live my best life, what people call the best life. But really to ask myself, okay, what does that mean to live my best life? I need to think that for myself. Because if you see in the Toltec tradition, there is no narrative around past lives.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying past lives are real or not,
Mm.
but it could be interesting to live this life as if it was the only one to be lived. That brings that sense of urgency. What do you think? What do you feel?
Oh my gosh. Um, yeah, this like even like thinking about death is like such a new concept for me that I don't even know what to say sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to repeat back what you said. Is sort of like this fear can be like harnessed into a power that can be put into intent to like propel us forward, like to like um, impulsar, yeah,
Impulsar, yeah.
impulsar into like to our purpose, like sort of in our walk, sort of like each step, like each action that we take. So like this impeccability, like so this impeccability is like through harnessing this power. And I heard you say like transforming fear into power, and I'm curious, like is it a and I don't know if you might not know the answer. It's just like maybe a rhetorical question, but is it a is it part of human nature to be afraid of death? Is that like just a given that we're afraid of death and that like it's the fear of death to transform into this power? Or I'm curious if there's like, does anybody ever like truly transcend the fear of death, like into a different emotion, or a different sense, or
Yeah. I feel, I sense that it can be fully transformed. I feel that it can be fully transformed. I feel it's not a simple task. It's not something that can be done from one day to another, considering how much programming we have, and also considering that that would imply like uh, also doing some transmutation of our biological nature, because this fear of death is also ingrained in our biology. Like as biological beings, there is a trying to escape from death, right? There is this preservation of life that is ingrained in us, right? This Freud calls it the eros, right? The drive for life,
mm-hmm.
opposing to thanatos, which is the death drive, right? But I feel it can be completely transcended. Yes, I feel we can do that. Um, and there are many narratives about what can happen, in death, and what something interesting to explore is this idea that death is as personal as life,
Mm.
in the sense that my death could be completely different to your death. And seers of ancient Mexico, the Toltecs, they say that we die according to our personal power, the personal power we have harnessed in this life. So there are many different ways to die. That's what they say, and I believe it to be true. And depending on the personal power and the impeccability that you have harnessed in this life, um, that can be different. And maybe what happens next, if anything happens next, could be different according to how we face that very powerful, important moment of our lives. And maybe nothing else happens after, but if it did, then I feel we should be living as, we should be trying to face this moment the best way we can.
Hmm. Thank you.
What's my thoughts on this?
Thank you. And I'm seeing Thomas Jerome is also commenting. He said, the ego is afraid of death because it knows it was never alive. It is the trickster who programs our biology. It is a predator. And perhaps he's saying through silence is how we transform the energy. I'm not sure.
Mhm.
And death is your best friend is the only thing that never lies to you. Hmm.
That is death as the advisor, right? Thank you, Thomas. Thank you for what you're putting in the table. I think it's really awesome. Let me check those comments again. The Yeah, in this fear of death, I also resonate with this comment, that the ego fears death very, very much. And because it really represents its full annihilation, right? And it's horrific, and also silence, yeah, as a pathway to transmuting this, yes. Um, and also, I mean, yes. Let me check the other comment because there was something I want to say about that. Mm. that is your best friend is the only thing that never lies to you. So this is the concept of death as the advisor, right? Uh, in the books of Carlos Castaneda, they say when you have a doubt, when you're trying to make a decision but you're unsure, then ask your death, what is death telling you to do? Considering that we are beings are going to die, like having that in front of you, knowing that, what do you decide? It really brings decision making into another dimension.
Mm.
That's how it has been for me. I wonder how that has been for you.
Yeah, and then Thomas is also saying once the will is activated, a warrior goes out and hunt his or her own death to live, and death is your best friend again. Um, yeah, so I can't help but think of like just a personal experience I've been going through like for a number of years actually. So um, I think as I started like as a woman, like and just learning very young, just whether it was conscious or unconscious, that your physical beauty is like part of your, whether it's true or untrue, this conditioning that is part of your worth, if you will, and your biological capability, like your biological capacity to bear children and have children. And so over the past number of years, I would say for about 7 years or so, I feel that I've been kind of chasing, like I feel like with my ego, I've been chasing to procreate, to have a baby, to, and it's like, and I've been chasing it like with my fear, but it's like, I just, over the past few days, like in encountering these concepts, like I feel that I'm starting to transform like that, like that the drive that I have toward that goal, if you will, or that desire, I have been is starting to transform as more of a will to experience what there is in life. Like for me, it's like experiencing the desire to experience like having a full body, having a pregnancy, having a baby, having a family, like living that rather than running toward it like as time is running out of fear. Yes, Thomas is saying the fire within. Like I'm just like really connecting with that, and really connecting with that fire within as my the impulsar. How do I say, like the how do you say that in English?
The impulse.
The impulse, yeah, like what's driving me, if you will. Like it's starting, like I'm realizing that my desire still exists, but there's like a renewed fire to it, and it's not
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm running out, I'm running out, I'm running out. It's like I'm going to continue to live and live and live, and like I heard once said, like I was listening to it's kind of like a little bit of a non sequitur, but it's connected, it'll come back around, that a few years ago, I had a cat that was passing away that I had been with me for like 14 years. And I was really looking for some solace around letting go of my cat. Like my cat was going to pass away within a few days. And I encountered something from Abraham Hicks. And I was listening to somebody asked a question to Abraham Hicks. Like, I'm really, like, I'm going to be really sad, my pet, what's going to happen, like what's going to happen, where does my pet go, and like the message that came through was that like with that animal nature of that cat, or whether it's a dog, like if they're sick, they will stick around longer, like just because they know we are going to miss them when they go. But if we can go to them and say, hey, the life that you've led has been like amazing. Our companionship has been amazing. You're free to go. You're free to like drop your body and go into the next phase of whatever it is that you're doing. And she, in Abraham Hicks, like was channeling that it was kind of like these animals are like walking around like happy, 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 dead. Happy, 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 dead. Happy, yeah, so it's like you just kind of like keep your walk going, and it's not like there's not a decline. It's like there's a continued impulse of the life. Da, 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 da. And that was, and I went home and I told my kitty cat, I was like, you're free to go. And then like the next afternoon, she passed on. And like, and I knew it was like a, for her, going into an enlightenment state. So yeah, just a little bit of what that activates in me.
That, yeah, I think that is awesome, and it's also important. I feel to recapitulate or have these experiences as references, you know, references in our relationship to death. When we have had family members passing away, or like animals, companions, whatever, all of this creates like there's a lot of knowledge around death in all of these experiences. And as we can go through those experiences and recall them and explore them, there is a lot we can learn, I feel. And yeah, I feel for me that that's one of the gems of this concept, or this practice of death as an advisor, is to have that fire lit, right? And seers, they say that they perceive energy as waves. There are waves of energy, right? All happening all the time, like the ocean. And what we want to do as warriors, or people walking this path, is to always be at the crest of the wave,
Mm.
in the peak of the energy, and move with the peak. And the impulse to do that is given by the awareness of our mortality.
Mm. Thank you. Thomas says operating with your body as a vehicle to ground and launch into two worlds, dos mundos. You would so actually there's a lot of things I want to ask you. So he also says we all encounter the double. It's a frightening encounter. Would you like to speak a little bit to this concept of the double?
The double. I'm going to speak from my personal experience, because I am not, even though I've read Castaneda, I'm not an expert on his work. I am not, but I can speak about what I understand as a double. And what I understand is that he proposes, in his proposal, in his work, he speaks of human beings as double beings, in the sense that we have this physical body, and also we have our energy body, our dreaming body. Sí, el cuerpo energético, el cuerpo de ensueños, or the double, right? El doble.
Mm-hmm.
And as I understand, the double is that who we are when we dream, right? That is also us, but it's not completely us like in this moment, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when we dream, we have a body. We are dreaming with a body, And when I'm discussing this with people, I ask people like, what is the body that you used to dream made of? I'm gonna ask you that. What is that body made of?
It feels like consciousness to me. Like it's made of like some stuff from the ethers.
Yeah, I feel similar.
Like
Yeah.
yeah.
And I feel when in this society we learned that dreams are just dreams, and that that's not important, and we learn to dismiss the fact that we have a body with that we use for dreaming. It's really like that, because when we dream we have a body, right? So what's that all about? So
Mm-hmm.
they say that this body is made out of energy, and I also feel it's made out of intent. It's like intent is holding it together. So
Mm-hmm.
the double is that other part of us, that has a lot of knowledge, the knowledge of the energy world, the knowledge of, we call it in Spanish, conocimiento silencioso, the inner knowing, the silent knowing, silent knowledge. And all of that is encapsulated in the double. And what they say is that most of us live like two lives. Like, I'm here doing this live stream, and then I go to bed, but there's no bridge between these two worlds, the tonal and nahual. There's no bridge. But when we begin practicing and cultivating our connection to the double, then a bridge begins to happen. And the double, the energy body, the dreaming body, becomes closer to us and closer and closer and closer. And with that dreaming body, many things can be done. For example, something like remote viewing from a Toltec perspective, as far as I understand, that would be something that you do with the double. You project the double into another place, and you can use that to see. You do it with the double, right? Or when we have dreams with other people, let's say sueños compartidos, shared dreams. We are doing that with our doubles. And what I've found in my own dreaming experiences is that even though like the blocks and conditioning I have in this personality and in this physical body sometimes block me from dreaming fully, I also see that my double has a knowledge of her own, let's say. That sometimes if I'm in a low state of mind here, it's hard to access that knowledge. But yeah, it's like, how do I say this? I feel like my double has a knowledge of her own. I feel that she has an agenda of her own. She does what she has to do in the dream world, and I do what I have to do here. So it's something like that, and at the same time, we are the same because it's us, right? Más o menos, más o menos.
Okay. So, have you had this experience of like, when you've been like connecting with your like, or how you say that your double has like a like knowledge of her own? Like, have you had an experience of like an encounter with your double where you like were like privy to her knowledge, or where you could see the distinction between your knowledge and her knowledge?
Uh, what a beautiful question. I would say like this, because when I'm dreaming, I am the double, right? It's not like something outside. It's like I am that. I am embodying
Yeah.
that. And when I am in the double, I can think of my physical self and my ordinary self, let's say. But I could say like this. Um, when dreaming and when being in the double, sometimes I find myself doing stuff that comes from an inner knowing that sometimes I don't have access to in this reality. For example, performing specific movements,
Okay.
right? That's the thing with energy passes or the magical passes. The narrative says that they come from the double,
Mm-hmm.
that these movements were discovered in dreaming by the seers of ancient Mexico, and then they replied the movements here in the physical reality. And that's why they have so much power, because they come from the knowing of the double. So remember the other day we were together and I told you I received an energy pass in my dream. So that is very important for me because that was the knowledge of my double.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And another example is singing for me. Singing is something that I am trying to bring from the Nahual. Because the first time that I really sang and that I connected with the power of singing as an energetic tool and as a mediator of intent, as a tool for intent, was in dreaming. I found myself singing in magical ways in the dream. And that was the knowledge of the double. And then I came to this reality and I was like, oh my God, I need to bring this knowledge here. So that's how I discovered the knowledge of my double, or like fixing problems. The way my double fixes problems on the other side has an effect on me here, and it like she has a creativity that sometimes it's hard for me to access in this state of consciousness. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. Yeah, and it's like I also hear it as like, oh, I don't know, like, so I mean, I don't often struggle with this, but I have before, and I know it is a common struggle of like struggling with feeling alone, you know? And it's like when I can connect in the dream time, and you know, before I encountered, you know, some of this information that you're sharing today, I've had like a long time relationship with my dreams as well, like just in my own intuitive way and from other dreaming practices. And I feel like I go into dream time and I will often like seek counsel in my dream time. And like for me, this is like a new concept of like of the double, like in the dream time, that like, you know, I've called it like, I don't know, I've called things my higher self or my connected to my spirit guides or different ways that I've, you know, connected that way. But that kind of opens me up to like I always have a companion kind of on the other side in a way. It's really sweet.
Yeah, and it's awesome to hear you like integrating this concept because I know you as a great dreamer. You are a great dreamer. You have that capacity, very like it's very awakening you. And yeah, one of my teachers, she used to say that our double is our truest love. You know, our truest love, our beloved one is the double. And she would even say like she was quoting Castaneda because she studied with Castaneda, that Castaneda would say that the emptiness we feel sometimes and the loneliness we feel that we try to fill up that void, you know, with connections and people and substances and experiences. They would say that that emptiness is the yearning for the double, our truest love, which you know, our it implies our completion.
Mm,
When we are with the double, we are complete.
mhm.
Like it implies our completion. We're
Yeah.
full. We're
That's
whole.
really interesting that you just said it implies our completion, our whole. Like, um, someone that you and I both know, like, posted something the other day regarding like peace. You know, like, what do you think about peace and I guess war? Um, like, peace implies completion, and completion implies like we're done. So, like, is it actually a good thing to feel complete? Or because we're alive, should we should we be continuing to, you know, strive, if that makes sense?
Hmm.
I
Well, I don't have the answer. You know, I can give you my thoughts and feelings on that.
love rhetorical questions, like just this like
Yeah.
discussion, just to say like we're just playing with questions and words, and you know we're not experts on anything other than the dance, really, that we
Well,
enjoy.
yeah, and I love that. And for me, like, I mean, I cannot speak to that because I feel like I have not reached that sustained level of wholeness in my life, like very sustained. So I cannot speak to that. But I have the feeling that as long as we're alive here, life is always going to be a challenge. And we're always going to be challenged. But the state in which we face the challenges can be from a state of feeling very whole, very alive, and very fulfilled, and very power, like with a lot of power. Or we can face the challenges of life feeling like crippled. Is
Hmm.
that a word? Crippled, right?
Yeah.
Feeling crippled, feeling empty, feeling like we don't have the capacity. So I speak of wholeness in that sense, feeling like full of power, feeling like you are in connection with your divine nature. In this case, that would be like connection with the double, with the inner knowing of the double. And with that capacity, we can face life, the challenges of life. Um, yeah, that's how I see it.
Mm. Well, I'm just going to circle back to like this, you know, some of the tenets of this Toltec path that you, or practices of this Toltec path that you've brought up. You mentioned energy passes, you mentioned recapitulation, and and we're talking about dreaming and lucid dreaming. Like, and these are like three of the practices of this Toltec path. Um, and are there more practices, or like does it do, do the practices kind of fall into one of those categories? Um,
Um, I mean, I think you could say that those are, I mean, those could be the main practices, but there are many other practices that could be, that are connected. Like, for example, the practice of stalking,
okay.
right, is pretty much connected to recapitulation,
Mm-hmm.
right? But it is a practice in itself, the practice of stalking. Um, the practice of inner silence is pretty much connected to all of that, right? The practice of intent, which is very mysterious. The practice of not doing, for me, the practice of not doing is a practice of, it's like part of the practices of stalking, right? So yeah, there are many practices, but yeah, those could be like the main like techniques.
Mm-hmm.
If we want to put it in terms of techniques, we can speak of magical passes, or the practices for the cultivation of qi,
Mm-hmm.
internal energy.
Mm-hmm.
The practices for recapitulation, or the practice of letting go of personal history, and the practices of dreaming.
Mm-hmm.
But that though all of those have nuances, right? They have different aspects to that.
Okay, so Thomas says here, stalking is hunting, and I'm actually curious about stalking because I've heard it a lot recently, but I'm not exactly sure what that entails and how it's connected to recapitulation. And actually, could you share a little bit, just like very briefly, of what is recapitulation for those that don't know what that is yet? First, yeah.
Mm. So recapitulation has been called, I always love saying this because it's so like dramatic and nice. I love it. There is some to the books of Carlos Castaneda. He was also a very good writer, and he knew what he was doing when he was choosing the words. And recapitulation is also called the apex of the practice of freedom. Love
Mm-hmm.
that. And it's basically a practice in which you undo, you undo, um, how, let me say how to say this. You undo your conditioning, you undo your programming, you undo the unconscious intents that you were holding in your life. And with this, what I'm trying to say is go back, recalling memories of your life with a specific breath sequence that allows you to clean the energetic charge of the memory. And so you can recall, you can bring back into you the energy that you left into that experience, the attention, the emotional charge that you left there. So you recall that. And now you can remember the experience as an empty shell. The experience is going to be an empty shell, something that happened, but it's not personal. It doesn't really feel like it happened to you. It's not personal, but you know it happened, but
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't have implications on you anymore. That's how we free ourselves from our personal history. In this path, we know that we don't have to be repeating our history because we don't need our history. We can give it to the earth or to the fire, whoever, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the practice of recapitulation is a systematic practice in which we review our lives with this specific breath sequence that allows us to undo, our personal history, and also learn a lot, because we also learn a lot about ourselves. We learn a lot about the energetics of how the universe works because we are reviewing very specific things.
Mm-hmm.
So that's basically the practice of recapitulation in very few words.
Mm-hmm. And can you share a little bit about how stalking is connected to recapitulación?
Yes. When we recapitulate, we start dismantling this idea that we are amber or that we are indigo, and we start to understand indigo or amber as um, characters, um, that have specific characteristics. And in that sense, we can change our characters. We can change the way we act, right? So stalking has to do with, as Thomas was saying, has to do with hunting. The qualities of hunting is being quiet, waiting for the right moment, very sharp observation, very like cold. There is a coldness, there is a heartless observation, you know. You observe things in that matter, and that allows you to shift from the character that you are used to play into other characters. So we stalk the different events of our lives, but mostly we stalk ourselves. We observe ourselves in that. It's interesting because the Toltecs say sin compasión, no compassion, in that coldness, in a very raw way. It's a very raw, system. We observe ourselves, our thoughts, our obsessions, our compulsions, our attachments in a very raw way. And we observe that as if we're observing a prey that we want to hunt. And in that way, we play tricks on ourselves. We stalk ourselves to dismantle those conditionings, those patterns, those habits, so that we can be free from that.
Beautiful.
So, yeah, that's a little bit of how I understand stalking.
Thank you. Thank you. Something else I just remember from the other day is just kind of circling back to death as advisor. You mentioned something about like turning, like I guess I don't know, turning to the left. Was it turning to the left and asking death? Something like that, like turning to one side and asking death something.
Yeah.
Could share
So
that.
what they say in this tradition is that death is always at your left, a little bit behind. So if we're going through a challenging moment, or we're making a decision that is challenging, we feel lost, we feel defeated in life, we turn to our left and we ask death. We ask advice, and death is going to answer to us. And her answer is what mattered the most. And in the books, it says that what death is going to answer, but I feel we can have many different ways of death answering us, in a very practical sense. But what they say, it's very poetic, is that death answers us, telling us that the only thing that matters is her touch. And that is going to answer, that doesn't really matter because I haven't touched you. And everything that matters, all that matters, is my touch. And that, again, the effect of that is that lights up that fire within of, oh my God, I don't have time for this. I don't have time for losing my energy in this decision. I'm just going to decide this. And something also beautiful about this practice of death as an advisor is that it brings us back to our heart. The path with heart. What they say in the books, in Castanera's books, is that all paths are the same because they lead to nowhere. So in that scenario, we can choose to walk a path that has a heart, that has energy, that brings the passion in us, that has meaning, that has purpose. That is the path with heart, and we feel it in the body. So when we ask death, what should I do with this? And she's gonna be like, dude, you're gonna die. That's basically what she responds sometimes. And in that case, it's like, okay, knowing that I'm gonna die, what am I gonna decide? Of course, I'm gonna decide to walk my path with heart, because anything else matters. I'm gonna die anyway. So if I was deciding from a place of greed, from a place of fear, from a place of trying to control the results, from a place of looking to have more money or fame or whatever, that is gonna lose power, because that fire within is gonna turn me to my path with heart, because it's all that matters, to walk a path with heart, because at the end we are gonna be facing death. So how do we want to live? For me, it comes down to that. That's my personal feeling on this.
Thank you. Two questions. One is that when you turn and you're kind of asking death, how do I make this decision? How can you tell that you're really that you're really hearing the sound of, or like the advice from death and not your ego?
Yeah. From my personal experience, I can only speak from that, and I'm not an expert in this. I'm just like a
We're not.
newbie, right?
We're all
Uh,
we're all just walking each other home.
yeah, exactly. So when I turn to the side and I feel that sensation in my belly, like, dude, I'm gonna die, you know. It's not a nice feeling necessarily, you know. It's not a comforting feeling. It's not that I feel good, you
Mm-hmm.
know, but rather personally, I feel como un hueco en el estómago, we say, like this void in the belly. Like, oh my God, like, yeah. And it's like, it's something like that, you know? It's something like that. And I feel like only with experience we're gonna be able to tell if it's coming from our true knowing of our mortality or from the ego. But for me, it feels like that. If I do it, and I feel this sense of complete urgency, full urgency, and I feel this void in my belly, like, oh my God, like I'm gonna die, you know? Then yes, I'm connecting to the energy of death. That's how it is for me.
Thank you for sharing that, because I've still been sort of like afraid to even ask, like ask, or like even like encounter death, like I've been afraid to like turn to the left and like take a peek. um
Yeah.
yeah, my other question was related to that too. Um oh shoot, okay, so I forgot my other question.
But I just want to say, Thomas is saying that he has to go. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your knowledge and the gems that clearly you have collected in your life of impeccability. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much, Thomas. And so one was, okay, how do I know that it's not my ego? And then the other question was, ooh, I don't remember. Other question. It's just okay. It's okay.
It's okay.
Hmm.
Yeah. I want to say that, for me, this whole idea of death as an advisor and knowing ourselves as beings that we're gonna die, it is a practical proposal, it is meant to be a practical thing, because I'm very well aware that other spiritual paths and practices actually preach quite the opposite, as a way of liberation. Like, for example, in A Course of Miracles, one of the main things they work with is the idea that death is an illusion,
Mm-hmm.
and that death is something that we have created in our egotistical and in our egotistical mind and in our perception of separation. And they work with that and they use that, and I guess that works for them. I've never really gone deep into A Course of Miracles, but I hold great respect for that path. And here in the Toltec path, we are saying quite the opposite. We're saying, like, dude, you're gonna die. What are you gonna do about it? So for me, it is not about trying to find which one is true and trying to uh, point at the other one as being untrue. For me, it's not about that. For me, it's the in the practical level, like what works for us, what really brings the best in us. And at least in this point of my journey, for sure, it is the practice of um, knowing that I'm going to die. That brings a lot of humility in me. That's something else that happens with the awareness of death. It's like, okay, I'm going to die. I'm not better than cockroach, we're all gonna die. You know, the sun, what an amazing being the sun is, and he or she or it, whatever, is gonna die too at some point. So death is like one of the beauties of death. It's the humility that it brings because we're all equal. We're equal in the eyes of death.
Mm-hmm.
So in a practical sense, it really works for me to know that I'm gonna die, and it brings this sense of urgency. Like I don't want to be wasting my time. I don't want to be living as if I was immortal because I'm not. I have to make the most out of every second of my life, out of every relationship. Every act must be impeccable. Not because someone is telling me like, oh, you should be doing this or that, or not because I'm following, the mandamientos or some rules. No, but because I know that I'm gonna die. That brings the best in me. That's what I've seen.
Mm. We have a last night from Sarah Tanjie. Last night I felt so afraid of dying soon. See, it is good to hear you talking about the topic.
Mm.
Wa amor infinito. Thanks for the reminder. Yeah. Yeah, so it's all energizing. It's like when I hear it, it's like energizing for me. So that's just such an irony for me, and I guess it's part of the trickster Hayoka mission of being a narcissistic empath.
I love to hear your commission.
Yeah, the narcissistic empath path. And look, this is me and my double.
That's awesome. Beautiful.
Yeah, and I want to circle back around. Like I was kind of thinking, like, oh, we're gonna wrap things up, and then I just wanted to circle back around to something. Gracias por su vida, mi hermana también,
Happy. Mi amorcito. I love you.
and Rachel, mi amor, welcome. And yeah, so talking about dreaming, and I had as I mentioned, I go into the dream time, and I every night I have a prayer, which is I connect to my spirit guides. I say like spirit guides, and I say like to my grandmothers, my sisters on the other side. I say grandmothers, sisters, spirit guides, show me where I need to go, tell me what I need to know, and this is like my prayer every night. And then I will have like a specific question every now and then, but sometimes like I just like to keep it very simple so that I'm just like very open to the highest guidance for myself in that moment. And so recently I had a friend, Roby. I don't know if he might have jumped on the live a while ago, but he might see it later. But he is, I think, he's from Slovakia, so he's over in Eastern Europe. I'm in Costa Rica. We met in Costa Rica, but he messaged me, a couple days ago saying you were in my dream last night, and that we were, and that there was a man in that I liked in his dream that was trying to talk to him, talk to me through him, and this man was trying to give him tobacco, and it was really interesting. So it's like this whole mystery of like the dream time and the dream space and this collective consciousness, and like how where it was like my double like connecting with his double like in some space, and is it a geographical space like like these are rhetorical questions, of course, like is it a geographical space where we all like where we connect? Do I have to travel from Costa Rica to Slovakia or vice versa? Or is it in another realm that transcends, you know, geography and distance, like as we know it? Um, yeah, just a little riff on.
I love that. Um, Beautiful questions. Beautiful questions. Of course, I have no idea if that's the true of the matter. I feel that mm, I don't know what I feel. It's like maybe we can travel, but there's something that Don Juan used to say to Castaneda, and he writes this in one of his books, The Art of Dreaming, which is the first book that I read of his, and it's amazing. He says something about learning how to use consciousness as a traveling vehicle.
Mm.
Consciousness as a traveling vehicle. Um, so in this sense, yeah, maybe we need to travel, but like, what does that mean, like, in that realm? Because what I've seen is that in dreaming, it's like the substance of dreaming has other qualities, or it's lighter. I don't know how to explain that, and it's more prone to intent. It is absolutely prone to intent here, but like in my experiences, intent is like quicker in the dream time. It's just immediate. So when you're having a lucid dream and you intend to see someone, you
Mm-hmm.
just shout their name, and using your voice, you're intending. That's another of the qualities of this center, the throat, which in this tradition is also called the center for decisions. So
Mm.
we use this to intend, and I summon someone, I call someone, and
Mm-hmm.
they appear in my dream. If I have enough personal power, and if my bond and my connection to intent is clear, then they are going to show up in this realm. I could call them. It's the same thing, but yeah, it's interesting, uh while you're sharing that you had this dream, like he had this dream with you, and like it's interesting to see the agenda that our doubles have on the other side. It's very beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And what did you say about, did you say that there's something about this part of the body was like the center for decisions?
Yeah, so what most people call the throat chakra, in the Toltec tradition we call it the center for decisions,
Mm.
and it's where the thyroid is also, which is like a commander of the hormones of the body, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they recommend not to touch it a lot.
Mm. I'm like,
No,
I'm touching it, I'm touching it,
it's fine, but that's what some people say, not to touch it. I learned not to touch it a lot, and I usually don't touch it. I'm gonna share something like kind of weird and funny, but it's someday, like recently, maybe like 2 months ago, I realized that I had a lot of like um dirt in my throat, because even when I shower, I don't really shower here.
Mm.
So I kind of keep that area not even to myself. It's like I just keep
Yeah.
it to a spirit.
Yeah.
And if I'm connecting with someone else, in a loving way, I don't like to be touched here.
Mm.
This area is like,
Mm-hmm.
it's
Mm-hmm.
interesting.
That is really interesting. Yeah, that's I feel that I could keep, we've been talking for about an hour. I feel like I could keep riffing on this, but I feel like we can wrap it up and like actually just
Yeah.
do like this soon, but not before I say one more thing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But one more thing, because we're gonna die, because so we might not have a chance to talk about this again. So,
Mhm.
um, yeah, there's like, how do I go into this? That in my journey with my health and my fertility and my life as a woman and the mystery of being a woman and the like the different, like when you're talking about the hormonal center, like how the thyroid is like, helps regulate the hormones, and there's other glands as well that are like connected to hormone regulation. But I was just learning that well, I've learned this before, but there's like a strong connection between like our sexual organs and our throat. And that when there's like blocks in one area, there can be blocks in another area. And as I kind of go down this yellow brick road of discovery like about hormonal balance and hormonal like dysfunction, I was learning about you know two things. One was that there's two certain hormones that the levels like are related to your fertility, and one of them is secreted by the ovaries, and the other one is produced by the brain, but also like very connected to the thyroid. And the one in the brain and the thyroid, I'm not going to get into like all the technical like names of the hormones, but the one in the brain and the thyroid is very affected by stress, and the one in the ovaries is very affected by um, like what helps it is circulation, so energetic circulation. So it's like when there's a dysfunction, it's like lack of circulation energetically, and um, and increased stress. So it's
Yeah.
like I can actually weave into like just all these topics of these different practices, like how finding that emptiness, finding that silence can be helpful to decreasing stress. Working with the energy passes helps with the circulation, and how all of that naturally lends itself to a to to a balanced system, um, in the realm of I'm coming mostly in the realm of like learning from a Chinese medicine doctor. So
Yeah.
a lot of around balance and like what they call like eternal spring. Like when you move into like qigong practices, it's like the eternal spring is that like we are continually regenerating our energy systems, and it's like this paradox of, hey, like death is right around the corner, and yet while we're living, it's like that, like happy 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 dead, like how do we keep moving like happy happy happy, keep our bodies in circulation, keep our stress level down through joy, through gratitude, through appreciation, through connection, through community is another big one, is community. So yeah, so we are, you're co-creating, you like sort of like created the spark of the Libertad de Percepción, the freedom of perception community, which has this mm, intento bilingüe, intento bilingüe, and then bilingual intent. And would, for those of you that are watching on my space, like if you could share, Amber, how they can connect with you and what your community entails.
So thank you so much. And what you just shared is very beautiful. About the eternal spring. It really touched my heart. Um, and yeah, the term that has been coming to me yesterday was it's we call it in Spanish un dispositivo de intento. It's an intent device. The community. The community is also a device.
Mm.
It's a device that is made out of people. It's made out of schedules, classes, and all of that. But at the end, we are a platform for intending freedom. And it's also a place where where people can learn about energy passes, about recapitulation, about lucid dreaming, and these like practices that are gonna help us to jump into freedom. And also, it's sustained by the connections that we create with one another and the love, and in those connections, and la complicidad, in the connections, the support we give each other. So it has this learning component. It has a practicing component because we practice every week. It has the classes that people can watch online, and also, very important, it has the human connections that really sustain the community as it is. And if someone is interested, we are creating a bilingual intent, and it is also very connected to Carlos Castanera's intent because he was bilingual, and in his experiences with Don Juan, there was a bilingual component going on,
Beautiful.
and many of the people that studied with Castanera are bilingual. And I studied with some bilingual teachers that also teach bilingually, let's say, like in both languages. And they also teach in Russian and Italian, but whatever. So we are harnessing this bilingual intent, and you, like being a part of the community, you are like also the spark of this bilingual intent. So if anybody wants to join, may you be an English or a Spanish speaker, you're more than welcome. And we are creating ways to make this possible. And you can write to me through the platform Libertad de Percepción, which is, I'm participating in this live, so you can look for Libertad de Percepción, freedom of perception here, and just send me a message, and I'm going to tell you how you can participate of the community.
Yay. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining.
Yes.
And yeah, and I am, what's the word? I am intending to study and practice so that I can participate as like helping like be an English speaking facilitator on the platform. That's
Yeah.
one of my visions to do this. And yeah, so thank you so much for joining me. I love this live, and I love you, and have a beautiful day, everybody.
Thank you so much. I love you too. And yeah, we'll see each other.
Hasta.
Bye bye. Thank you so much.
Ciao.